the killer. We want justice.
We had Nia Wilson and Latifah Wilson, ages 18 and 26 respectively, along with a third sister, who were transferring at the MacArthur platform. As they were transferring at the MacArthur platform, they were approached by an individual with a knife who struck very rapidly. He is a violent felon who is currently on parole, and we currently have an active arrest warrant for his arrest for the murder of Nia. After the stabbing, as the suspect fled, Mr. Cowell fled through the parking lot. And what we see on that video footage, you see Mr. Cowell not only on the platform footage doing the stabbing, but also in the parking structure. And what he does there, he doffs his clothing. He takes off his clothing, which, in my opinion, is a consciousness of guilt of an individual who knows that the police are responding.
We're at MacArthur BART station right now, where behind me there is a vigil being held for Nia Wilson. Nia and her sister Tashia were attacked last night about 9:45 p.m. on the BART platform when a white man, seemingly unprovoked, stabbed them both and fled. BART police responded and treated them while waiting for paramedics. Tashia was rushed to the hospital and Nia was pronounced dead at the scene. Today, BART police released the suspect's identity as John Cowell. BART Police Chief Carlos Rojas said that Cowell is a violent felon who is currently on parole. Although no motive has been established, members of the community are pointing to the stabbing as another instance of white supremacy. Carlos Rojas has also said, up to this point, we don't have any information that it was race-related, but we can't discard it, and described the attack as one of the most vicious attacks I've seen. There certainly has been a rise of white supremacy and racism in the Bay Area in the last few months. From right-wing rallies to internet sensations Barbecue Becky and Permit Patty, we have seen our fair share of racism rising in the Bay.
So this dude just passed out on the train, and this white boy.
Somebody please hold the door.
Jaw-dropping video out of Long Beach Wednesday night after witnesses say this man refused to let an unconscious person interrupt his ride on the Metro Blue Line.
Dude just had a seizure. But this white boy is gonna drag him off the damn so he don't miss his ride.
The voice you hear on the video is this man. He asked us to call him Billion.
Once I finally figured out what was happening, you know, it was real unacceptable.
Billion says the unconscious man had thrown up on the train before collapsing and still had a medical wristband on.
In the top part of his head, he had a hole, but he also had metal staples in his head. You know, looked like he was fresh out the hospital.
Billion claims the drama all started when he heard passengers confronting the man in the suit. He went over to check it out and saw the man on the ground.
I still wasn't aware that the white guy had actually, from what people were saying, he had pulled the person who had passed out from his seat over to the ground.
He says that's when the guy in the suit started dragging the man off the train right in front of him. So he pulled out his phone.
So we all initially responded, you know, telling him to get his hands off on whatever, and the guy's pants fell all the way down, so he was naked. So he stopped for a second, pulled his pants up, laid him out on the ground.
Billion says he feels the man's motivation is clear. He didn't want to be delayed.
What'd you just say?
There are a lot of people.
Was he wearing no?
The suited man eventually went outside to check on the man.
Bro, are you responsive?
But to Billion, that man had already revealed what his priorities were.
This man's life could very likely be in danger, and you worried about getting home or wherever you headed, as opposed to maybe having to take an extra 20 minutes to allow paramedics to show up.
Maybe seconds after she went into the restroom, she heard shots. She ran out the restroom and she said, "Frederick, oh my gosh, Frederick was in there. What did you do to Frederick?"
It's been 3 days since the murder of Corey Taft's father, Fred. The 57-year-old truck driver was shot to death in a public restroom Saturday during a family reunion at Pan American Park in Long Beach. The park is surrounded by churches, schools, and homes. Long Beach police have no motive and no suspect.
My dad didn't have any enemies. He was a people's person, very kind-hearted man, and He got along with everybody. Everybody loved him. He didn't have any enemies at all.
Fred Taft's only child wears a T-shirt with a photo of her and her dad. Corey Taft is scared because the gunman is on the loose. She says she's also worried that her father may have been targeted because of his race. After the killing, a coach shared with the family that his softball players have been harassed at this park. According to police, the gunman is a white man in his 50s, and detectives have not uncovered any evidence at this point to indicate a hate crime.
None of my family never seen this coming. We just want closure. My dad didn't deserve this.
A family friend who was in the women's restroom at the same time says she heard at least 3 shots. She ran out and says she saw the gunman walking away, but she never got a look at his face. She did see that he had a gun by his side and was wearing a big camouflage hat. In Long Beach, Michelle Geely, CBS 2 News.
I'd love to be here when I can be more fully in depth on this subject, because there's a whole lot of illusions about Africa's relationship with other people in the world. There's a whole lot of illusion about our relationship to the religions in the world. And these belief systems that had its origin in Africa, all of them, and there is no exception, turned on African people. I said there is no exception. And there's one thing you have to get through your mind and keep it. Nothing that ever came from the European mind was meant to do anything but facilitate European domination of the world. And I said there's no exception. Everything that was brought into this continent, everything, every idea, every so-called religion was meant to dominate and to control. The Arabs had no illusions about it. The Europeans had no illusions about it. You were the ones with the illusions. And yet every element that went into the making of every major religion in the world started in Africa. Why is it that you are so naive? You let people redress something that you invented, sell it back to you, and enslave you through it. Our relationship with the people of the world, and the fact that we created peaceful nations that had no word for jail because no one had ever gone to one. No word for old people's home because no one ever threw away grandma and grandpa. No word for orphanages. We did all of this, and over half of human civilization was over before we knew that a European was in the world. Before he wore a shoe or lived in a house that had a window. Now, Africa has always and still is the prize for the whole world. We as a people have always been the world's richest people, culturally rich, mineral rich. We have always been the prize because we have always had and still have something that other people won't, think they can't do without, and don't care to pay for. Because we have always been the prize, we have been under siege for over 3,000 years. Nothing that ever brought into Africa from the outside was meant to do the Africans any good. That means all other religions. Islam was the handmaiden of Arab imperialism. Christianity was the handmaiden of European imperialism. The Hebrew faith was the handmaiden of a concept called the chosen people. Now, if God is kind and God is merciful and God has no stepchildren, he won't choose one over the other. And to say he chose some people, you're making him a bigot. And to say that he endorsed enslavement of one people over the other, you're making him an accessory to murder. The Arabs used Islam to rationalize their slavery and their imperialism. The Europeans used Christianity to rationalize their slavery and imperialism. Who are you kidding about friends in the world? Damn it, if you want a friend, look in the mirror.
I do. Don't deal with violence. I is peaceful Rasta man. I don't steal, cheat. You see it? I man serve Selassie I continually. No matter what the weak heart say. And I know that I is like a tree that planted by the river of water. And not even the dog that piss against the wall of Babylon shall escape this judgment. For I know what? I know that all of the youth shall witness the day that Babylon shall fall.
People get ready for the time has come. We don't want a baggage, just get and go. This is the day what I was waiting on. All we got to do, just move along. Oh, people get ready. Oh, people get ready. We don't want nobody, no cursing, no dragging, just move us on. Oh, people get ready. Oh, people get ready. Oh, people get ready now. Oh, people get ready. People get ready for the time has come. We don't want no baggage, just get and hold it. This is the day what I was waiting on. All we got to do, just move along. Oh, people get ready. Oh, people get ready. We don't want no fighting, no cursing, no dragging, just move us on. Oh, people get ready. Oh, people get ready. Oh, people get ready now. Oh, people get ready. Yeah, I'm waiting. You get ready. Come, people. Yeah. I'm waiting. Get ready.